Hi, Wildlife and Forestry class. I am here today to talk to you about forest biodiversity. You've been studying it over the last couple of days, and specifically we're going to focus on an example today in class. So if you could all get out your handouts 2A through C on the American chestnut. That's what we're going to use to follow along today. If you can't print it, then you'll just want it up on your Chromebooks so you're ready to take a look at it when it's time. Okay, so we're gonna do a case study today, and if you know anything about a case study, it's all about studying a specific object, person, in this case, a tree, to kind of describe what it is, its status, what's going on with it, if there are issues, etc. Okay, and then from that case study, we are able to develop maybe some conclusions, issues with the tree, or what's going on in a specific environment somewhere. Okay, so that's why we do these case studies, is so that we can develop kind of a plan, okay, of where we need to go based on what the studies tell us, which all of these studies are usually done by biologists or scientists, and they are going to gather the information and compile it and put it into a readable document for everybody to understand and utilize. Okay, so obviously the American chestnut today has been created for you by scientists. They have studied this tree and understand what's going on with it. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we are going to kind of answer three really important questions, and I believe all three of these are also put in today's activity notes. Okay, so the first one is, how does forest biodiversity change? The second one is, how can humans affect forest biodiversity? And then the third one is, what is a healthy level of forest biodiversity? So those three questions you need to answer as you do this activity today in some way, shape, or form. And we're going to talk about them at the very end as well. Okay, so to take a look at your American chestnut, which you have in front of you, you should have a 2A sheet. 2A basically goes over a profile of your tree. Okay, it's going to tell you a little bit about where it's located, its native range. It gives you a little history on the top part. Okay, the second page, 2B, is going to focus really on all of its importance, some articles, or I should say an article summary, not really articles, an article summary of the entire chestnut tree. Okay, and so the back 2C concludes that article summary for you. Okay, so that's what you're going to be using today to focus on basically this assignment. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to give you some time right now to read through your American chestnut, use those three questions as guidelines for you, and then we are going to talk about a few things related to the article that you read, and discuss some questions briefly, and then finally sum up with those last three questions. So I would like you to go ahead and answer or read through it and answer those questions now. Please stop the video. You can restart it when you're finished. All right, so after you've read the article, let's take a look at a few things. So I'm going to ask just a couple questions, and I just want you to think about it, and then I'm going to give responses right away for you. So the first question is, in the early 1900s, what values did people place on the American chestnut? So you should have found that it was the largest, most impressive tree in the forest, and people used the nuts for food. They also used the leaves for medicine and wood for construction, obviously. In the early 1900s, where was the American chestnut found? You should have all read that it was found on a 200 million acre area of land, Midwest to Michigan, south to Alabama and the Mississippi, and then eastward into the Appalachians. So it had quite a large expanse. Over the last century then, what has happened to the American chestnut? This should have seemed really exciting, sad, and also interesting to you as you read through this part of the history. But the fungus, which is called Crephanectra or Nectria parasitica, commonly known as the chestnut blight, okay, was introduced to the U.S. accidentally with exotic garden plants. So basically, when people got plants from other countries to start growing in their gardens, these really exciting new varieties that came out, they brought over these plants that were full of this fungus. And the fungus got into the American chestnut. The American chestnut had no ability to fight off the fungus because it's never been associated with it before, and therefore it hit it really, really hard. And so basically, from 1904 to 1950, the fungus spread throughout the entire range of the American chestnut and destroyed nearly all of the trees. So why didn't Asian varieties of chestnut show signs of that chestnut blight? I kind of answered that for you already, but the fungus has been in Asia for thousands of years, and the chestnut trees just adapted to it, okay? Similar to something that you might know as evolution. The trees that had the ability, the genetic makeup to survive the blight, did survive the blight. So in other words, we do have some American chestnuts that survived here because they were able to fight it off. And that's really what we have today, are the descendants of those that were able to survive. Okay, question number 5. What effect does the disappearance of the American chestnut have on the tree species diversity of eastern forests? The species diversity throughout the eastern forest has decreased because of the disappearance of the American chestnut caused by that blight. So basically now they have more diversity, and it's not just all American chestnuts. Number 6, the largest remaining stand of American chestnut is in La Crosse County, Wisconsin. Well outside the original range of the tree, because as you noted before, we didn't mention Wisconsin as having them. Okay. How did the trees get there, and how did they survive the blight for so long? You should have found in your reading that they were planted there in the late 1800s by a local resident and have reproduced and spread to cover 60 acres of forest. So it didn't just happen naturally. 2,500 chestnut trees now live in that forest, and because they were well outside the natural range, the fungus never reached them, which is why we still have American chestnuts today. Number 7, why has the stand of American chestnut in La Crosse County become a focal point for forest research? This should have been easy to answer as well. Because they were planted outside of that original range, and basically because we lost most of the other trees, they are being used to study their genetics, okay, and how we can keep the chestnuts alive today. Number 8, what kind of research is being done in the American chestnut stand, and what is at stake? So forest researchers from all over the country are studying the trees and fungus to find ways to combat it, okay? Currently, they are using a natural occurring hypovirus that attacks the fungus itself, and they're hoping that this will continue to work and they'll be able to basically demolish the fungus. Number 9, how does the concept of genetic diversity become a concern in this story? So this is going to lead you back to some of the questions I asked you at the beginning to focus on. So basically, the genetic diversity of the chestnut in Asia allowed it to adapt over a long period of time to that chestnut blight. Okay, and the genetic diversity of the fungus is of concern, obviously, to researchers, and that hypovirus that is used to attack it is only effective against certain strains of that fungus. So it doesn't always work on other strains of that same fungus, which means that the chestnut's still going to be affected unless we get the exact fungus that hypovirus treats. Okay, so the genetic diversity of the fungus throughout the eastern U.S. may help it to survive the hypovirus today, and therefore we can't kill it. And then what perspectives does the author give on the American chestnut? Okay, so at the end of the article, you'll notice that the author states, a century without chestnut may sound like a lot in human years, but it is only a moment in ecological time. All right, so now that I kind of went over some of the big questions about the chestnut and what you should have studied, we have to go back to those 3 big questions, okay? So basically the biodiversity insights that we should have taken away from that reading. How does forest biodiversity change? How can humans affect forest biodiversity? And what is a healthy level of forest biodiversity? So to address some of those, I'm going to read just a few things for you, okay? The first one is, the American chestnut was a dominant tree in the eastern forests, and many human and wild populations depended on it for food, ultimately, the nuts that were produced, okay? And then also the wood. And the loss of one species then can influence many other species. So it influenced us because we didn't have the tree anymore to use to build with, or the nuts that were produced from it, and think about all the other animals who wouldn't have had those as well. So human influence, or humans were definitely influenced by that diversity, okay? Also, humans purposefully introduced the American chestnut to Wisconsin, and humans accidentally introduced the chestnut blight that decimated the American chestnut throughout the native range. So basically, choices humans make can have a large impact on our forest biodiversity. All right, next item is that the American chestnut trees that survived the longest, basically the ones that are in La Crosse right now, were outside of the native range. So ecosystem diversity, can help isolate and protect areas from the effects of diseases and other disturbances. And last but not least, scientists have the opportunity to use genetic resources, okay, that's genetic type diversity, okay, to help the tree survive the continued threat of chestnut blight. So humans have the opportunity to protect the species from extinction and maintain forest biodiversity. Those 4 major points should have answered those 3 questions that I wanted you to be able to answer by the end of your reading. Okay, so now what you're going to do is follow the assignment that is put into Google Classroom for you on reading one of the other 4 tree case studies. So you have the American elm, the eastern hemlock, the red maple, or the white oak. Your choice, you get to pick one of those, and you're going to create a poster on that displaying specific information that I put right into the assignment in Google Classroom. And then you're going to present that poster to me using a video. Okay, so if you have questions, please make sure you ask along the way so I can address those. With that, good luck on your project, and I am excited to see your videos. Thanks so much.